On this edition of the Correspondents, U.S.-backed Iraqi security forces stormed the Mosul airport in the latest new offensive aimed at driving Islamic State militants out of western Mosul. Malaysian police say the two women suspected of assassinating the half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un knew exactly what they were doing. And Hollywood rolls out the red carpet for the 89th Academy Awards. And this year's Oscar goes to... Hello and welcome to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Millar Sega in Washington. Well, we begin now with the latest phase in the battle to retake Mosul. U.S.-backed Iraqi forces this week launching an air and ground offensive to drive remaining Islamic State militants out of western Mosul. VOA's Jesusamin Oni has our report on the 4-month-old operation to liberate Iraq's second largest city.
Hundreds of troops and tanks and armored vehicles backed by air power rolled across the desert towards western Mosul early Sunday morning. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi announced the start of the battle in a televised speech, calling it a new dawn.
We call on our brave troops to start the push to liberate the rest of the city and to liberate people from the oppression and terrorism of Islamic State.
It's the latest phase in a 4-month-old effort to free Mosul from Islamic State. Last month, Iraq declared eastern Mosul fully liberated. However, ISIS has continued to launch attacks there, including a suicide bombing in the hours following the start of Sunday's offensive. The United States has been providing air and logistical support throughout the operation. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis says that will not change.
The U.S. forces continue in the same role that they were in East Mosul, and the coalition forces are in support of this operation, and we will continue, as you know, with the accelerated effort to destroy ISIS.
Essentially. And to bring us up to date now on the coalition efforts to destroy Islamic State, we are joined from London via Skype by VOA reporter Jamie Detmer. Welcome, Jamie. And we're joined here in Washington by international broadcaster Khalid Fatah from VOA's Kurdish service. It's good to have both of you gentlemen on the program. Lots to talk about. So, Jamie Detmer, you've spent some time reporting in both Iraq and Syria and even in Mosul. So I'll start with you. This has been a long and bloody battle. It's been going on for 4 months now. Are Iraqi forces any closer to actually liberating Mosul?
Well, of course they are. It took them more than 3 months to take East Mosul. Some people thought it would take less than that. And most predictions by Western analysts and by military people I've talked to think that West Mosul could take longer. And there are good reasons for that. It's more heavily populated than East Mosul. There's probably more of a sympathetic residence in West Mosul towards the Islamic State. There are narrow roads in West Mosul, which means that armored vehicles and tanks have less maneuverability than they had in East Mosul. They're likely to face as stiff, if not stiffer, resistance from the Islamic State. I mean, from my experience, even when you take a neighborhood, as in East Mosul, it's not over. By nighttime, you have Islamic fighters back. You're facing suicide bombings, you're facing booby traps, roadside bombs, and snipers. And they have this network of tunnels that suddenly they appear out of. I covered Bashika, the Battle of Bashika with the Peshmerga, and the next day we still were confronted by suicide bombers.
Jamie, what's the significance of taking the airport?
It was an early prize to them. This was a key objective to take early. They took it in a few hours, as well as an adjacent military barracks. There are no buildings there at the airport anymore. ISIS destroyed them, and it's damaged the runway. But it was a key objective for the Iraqi forces to get that quickly. They're now in 2 West Mosul districts. They're punched into them, but they're facing in the south some difficulty navigating past trenches and a high berm.
Khalid, let me get you into this conversation. Kurdish forces make up the second largest fighting force there in Mosul. What is the role for Peshmerga and Kurdish fighters?
Well, at the beginning of the Mosul liberation operation, there was an agreement between the central Iraqi government and the Kurdish government and U.S. and coalition led by U.S. So the agreement was for the Kurdish Peshmerga forces to first start advancing in the east of Mosul and take and control the territories in that area, which is mainly is multi-ethnic area, Kurds, Arab, Yazidis, Shabak, and Christian. Right now, the Peshmerga forces is their role right now to support Iraqi forces in east of Mosul more than participating directly in a fight against ISIS.
Peshmerga have been remarkably restrained in helping the Iraqi forces. What's in it for the Kurds?
Well, for the Kurds, Mosul is a strategic area controlled by ISIS. It threatens stability in Kurdish region. This is the main reason, and that was been one of the statement published by the Kurdish government saying it's ISIS being in Mosul, it threatened our security. ISIS attempt many act of violence in Kurdish area. So liberating Mosul, I think, in terms of the security of the Kurdish region is important. Also, it's threat to all Iraq.
Right.
And Kurd, they don't want to stay in the back when this particular operation started, because in political way, it's also important for the Kurds who control Mosul or who control half Mosul. They will have a big decision in the future of the area.
Right. And Jamie, let me ask you this question. ISIS militants clearly outgunned and outnumbered there. Strategically, what kind of tactics are they using? How have they lasted as long as they have?
Well, fighting in an urban area is never easy for an offensive force. So they've had 2 years really to build up a stockpile of booby traps and suicide bombs, which they're deploying. I mean, one of the most extraordinary things I saw in Bashika, just outside Mosul, when the Peshmerga were attacking there, was 7 massive suicide bombs, car bombs, going off one after the other.
Right.
These are large bombs. They've got snipers as well who are taking a toll. So it's basically a stiff resistance in an open area, which always favors defenders and not attackers. And also, you have to remember, the Iraqis are trying to keep the casualties, civilian casualties, as well as their own casualties down. The Islamic State doesn't care if they lose fighters or if civilians aren't killed. So they've got no, if you want, kid gloves on them.
Right. Khalid, once coalition forces and Iraqi forces actually stabilize what's going on in Mosul, what happens next in Mosul? Does it become now a political issue? Because there's a lot of sectarian kinds of...
If it's not observing right now, but in coming days after liberation of the entire Nineveh province, including all the way to the Syrian border, there will be a problem if the Iraqi government not step up its effort to reach an agreement. There are several forces in the area. They are Shia militia, Iraqi army, Sunni, Turkish army, plus Kurdish. This area, it's very important for all of them, and they have to get an agreement. For first time, Iraqi Prime Minister today and yesterday he submitted a statement asking for support from people inside, and that we're gonna, if anyone of his surrounded himself to the Iraqi forces, they will have a fair trial. Otherwise, supported the ISIS, they were gonna get killed. So I think it's the first step toward to create kind of reconciliation among all the parties.
Jamie, in the last few seconds that I have, what do you see for the future of Mosul after this operation is done? Do you expect more trouble ahead?
Well, my colleague points out that there could well be. Yes, there had been an attempt to get an agreement before the battle started, but the Americans, the Obama administration kind of gave up on that because they couldn't get any agreement. No, I mean, there's going to be major disagreements about how Mosul is governed, how to reconcile the different sects, who should control not just the city, but also there's a disputed area outside with the Kurds and Christians and Yazidis. No, there could be some very serious problems.
Gotcha. We'll be hearing from you again. Thank you so much to our correspondents, Jamie Detmer and Khalid Fattah. Time now for our first break. And when we come back, the international intrigue continues in the assassination of Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. This is The Correspondents on Voice of America.
In notes, this is Living Better.
A park in New York City. Does its dirt hold clues to new medicines? It might, according to geneticists at Rockefeller University, like Sean Brady, who are digging around to find bacteria in their own backyard.
Not just antibiotics, but a large number of our pharmaceutical agents, the things we use in the clinic to cure cancer, immunosuppression, antibacterial agents, come originally from studying bacteria. And so the idea here is to guide you to not only those old molecules, but guide you to bacteria that might produce new molecules that have new activities.
Brady says it's not necessary to travel to exotic locations to find clues to medical research.
Almost any molecule you can think of that might have come from bacteria, so if you don't know those types of molecules, things like vancomycin, the antibiotic of last resort, we can find molecule or genes that we think would encode molecules like that.
Over half of all medicines used today were inspired by or derived from bacteria, animals, or plants. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
And welcome back to The Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Millar Sega in Washington. The investigation into who killed the half-brother of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un appears to be expanding. This week, Malaysian police said the two women suspected of poisoning Kim Jong-nam at Kuala Lumpur International Airport last week were not only trained by North Korean operatives, they knew exactly what they were doing. Video from Kuala Lumpur shows one of the women grabbing Kim Jong-nam from behind and holding something over his face. At least one of the women claimed she was tricked into attacking Kim, believing that she was taking part in some kind of television prank. Now, two others have already been arrested in connection with the attack, and authorities say they are trying to find additional suspects, including Hyun Kwang-sung from the North Korean embassy in Kuala Lumpur and Kim Ok-il, an employee of North Korea's state-owned airline. Kim Jong-nam was once considered the heir apparent to lead North Korea, but fell out of favor with his father Kim Jong-il back in 2001. South Korea says Kim Jong-un issued a standing order for his half-brother's assassination after the younger brother took power back in 2011. And as we go to air, Malaysian authorities have now identified the deadly chemical toxin that may have been used to kill Kim Jong-nam. We get the latest now from the host of VOA's Asia in a Minute, our very own Steve Miller. Steve Miller, you've been up to date on this. What are we finding out about the chemical that was used to allegedly kill Kim Jong-nam?
Well, Malaysian authorities say it's VX nerve agent, a relatively small quantity.
Which is a banned substance.
It's a bad substance, a very deadly substance. Very small quantities can be used to kill someone, whether it be taken in through the skin or through mucous membranes in the eyes or nose or face.
So how deadly is this chemical actually?
It is very deadly. I mean, very small amounts, trace amounts can actually kill a person, and that may have been what we see in here. The autopsy from the police say that evidence of VX nerve agent was found on the face and in the eyes of Kim Jong-nam in Malaysia. Now, what they've also said is that they aren't sure how it got into the country. They're currently investigating that. They're currently investigating where all these suspects traveled to in the airport and around Malaysia. And also, if it was truly a very small amount, it would be almost incredibly hard to detect.
Who have access to that kind of a VX nerve agent?
Well, South Korea has said that they believe that North Korea has tons of chemical agents at their disposal. So it could have come from North Korea. It really doesn't know because the Malaysian officials haven't been able to determine how it got into the country.
Right. So North Korea obviously denying that it had any role in this. And one of the suggestions that I heard is how could this be this VX nerve agent when these women had their hands exposed. How come how did they survive something as
All right. North Korea continues to question the neutrality and the unbiased nature of the investigation. They say that Malaysia is being duped by either the United States or South Korea and trying to paint North Korea as this. And again, the question is, how did these women not get sick or fall ill if it truly was VX nerve agents? Some people say that perhaps they sprayed on some kind of latex or second skin to give them some protection, or if it was truly a very, very small amount, perhaps the thicker skin on the hand gave them some kind of protection, which is why they went to the washroom right afterwards to wash it off.
So obviously what we have is a lot of circumstantial evidence, no smoking gun. So what we do have is motive, correct?
Well, in some cases. I mean, Kim Jong-nam was looked at as possibly a replacement for Kim Jong-il, but again, as you mentioned in this
He was initially the first choice, correct?
At one point, yes.
As the elder brother.
As the elder brother, as the oldest brother, but in 2001, he tried to go to Tokyo and visit Japanese Disneyland there, and that kind of didn't go well, so he fell out of favor. So there's also reports in 2012-ish that Kim Jong-un tried to assassinate him, and that there had been that standing order. So this would fall in line with that narrative.
North Korea's pretty much only friend in that region has been China for the longest time. Have they weighed in at all on this investigation?
Well, I spoke to a number of analysts this week, and what they said is that if you look at Sino-North Korean relations, China accepts a lot of behavior that North Korea does, as long as it doesn't
They've been
undermine.
quite lenient in the past.
Well, they view it as long as it doesn't undermine Chinese interests, they're willing to accept a certain degree of behavior
Does
from North Korea.
this now cross that threshold?
What they told me was that if this changes the status quo and North Korea is put back on a terrorism watch list, we could see a change in behavior from Beijing towards Pyongyang.
So it could change the relationship there.
It just really depends on what
Haven't they
evidence
already
is.
started making inroads that way? Didn't China stop shipping coal?
That's a very good point, but one of the analysts told me is that China's allowed to import a certain amount of coal every year.
Right.
And it's unknown how much coal has been imported so far. So if the quota for the year under the sanctions has already been met, then China canceling further imports would be seen as meeting the sanctions requirement and could be also viewed as promoting themselves as being tougher on China when in fact they couldn't legally import more.
So how is the assassination of Kim Jong-un's half-brother resounding in South Korea, for example?
Well, it certainly is topping a lot of news stories in South Korea, but they're also dealing with the tail end of the Park Geun-hye impeachment trial, which is
They were in the midst of a political scandal, aren't they?
In the midst of political scandal, it continued on this week. Closing arguments for the impeachment trial at the Constitutional Court are set for Monday the 27th. And there's been jockeying back and forth by Park's lawyers saying that the court is too biased against her and trying to seek more time in that.
So, Steve, what's the upshot of that, of all this back and forth? Are we stuck in a bureaucratic kind of situation, or is it just more back and forth, political grumbling from both sides? Or can we see actually something concrete happening there?
In South Korea?
Yeah.
Well, the court has said that absolutely on the 27th they will have the closing arguments, that the impeachment case and trial will end that day, and they will move towards the adjudication of the matter and really hope to have a decision on the impeachment of Park Geun-hye sometime in March before another justice's term ends.
So let's wrap this up with the latest we know on the Kim Jong-nam assassination. Where does this investigation go from here? Because I understand Interpol has now been contacted.
Right. So there are 4 people in custody: Malaysian woman, Indonesian woman, her boyfriend who's from Malaysia, a Vietnamese woman, 1 North Korean. 4 North Koreans fled the country, and that is where Malaysian authorities have sought Interpol's assistance in tracking them down.
They're looking for North Korean diplomats, right?
Well, there is one who has been identified, a second secretary, I believe, at the embassy that they would like to question, and they are trying to facilitate that as well.
So this story is ongoing, and we expect to have you back on for the latest updates on this international assassination that's turning into almost something like something we see in a movie,
yes.
right? Well, Steve Miller, thank you so much for all that information. We're going to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, it's that time of the year again. Hollywood rolls out the red carpet for Oscar and the best movies this year. Penelope Palou with her predictions coming up. But first, a reminder, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.
This is BizBeat.
The sun sets over Tel Aviv, where thousands of entrepreneurs create high-tech startup companies in a land with few natural resources.
No mining, no oil, no stuff like that. The only resource, the only natural resource that we have is the most powerful one, the human brain.
Moshe Hogeg is the co-founder of Siren Labs, claiming to make the world's most secure phone, but they've raked in $70 million in venture capital. Another startup, Aerobotics, has secured millions of dollars also, designing drones requiring no human involvement. Worldwide, Tel Aviv is considered a top startup destination, and Ayal Gura, an investor and founder of Zebra Medical Vision, says Israel has 3 times more venture money per capita than the United States.
So it's easier to raise money here, actually.
And Madi Kushner develops glasses projecting 3D images and holograms, and he says,
"We are not afraid of failures."
For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
And welcome back to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Milar Sega in Washington. Well, seen any good movies lately? Well, we hope you have, because the 89th Academy Awards are once again upon us. And like most years, fans, critics, and Hollywood insiders are divided over which nominees are deserving of hoisting that coveted award. But here's something to think about. Although we like to think that films are judged primarily on their artistic merit, political considerations and marketing often play a big role in determining who actually goes home with Oscar. VOA's Penelope Palou has more on that.
City of stars, are you shining just for me?
Damien Chazelle's nostalgic musical La La Land is considered by many the inevitable winner at the Oscars. The film offers a tribute to Hollywood musicals, has great cinematography, good music, and a tear-jerking story. But is the film really worth all of its 14 nominations? A number equal only to 2 other movies throughout Hollywood history, the 1950s drama All About Eve with Bette Davis, and James Cameron's 1997 Titanic.
All right, open your eyes.
Giovanna Chesler, director of the Film and Video Studies program at George Mason University, says that as in any other campaign, robust advertising and a fat purse are often more essential than artistic merit.
That's just to make sure you have the screenings in these markets at these times. So there is a big machine, a PR machine that has to be in place for the nominations to come out.
A filmmaker herself, Chesler says she has renewed faith in the Oscars because this year there are more nominations for minority films and actors. She points to Moonlight, a coming-of-age drama of an African-American boy growing up in a drug-infested community, and Denzel Washington's adaptation of the play Fences, about a struggling husband and father who, despite his flaws, is working to make his mark in the world.
And joining us now, someone who's already made her mark on the Correspondents, correctly predicting the Oscar winners since VOA's Correspondents made its official debut 3 years ago. That distinction, of course, belongs to our very own film and entertainment reporter, Penelope Palou. Thank you for joining us this week. And I should say that you have actually correctly predicted the Oscar winners for much longer than the Correspondents has been on the air.
That is true, but I try never to lose sight that things can go the other way.
Yeah,
you know?
It could happen one day. They're going to come up to you and say, Penelope, you got it all wrong.
Right.
But before I talk to you about the picks, it's a very interesting report you just put out there, because essentially your interview, Giovanna Chesler, essentially said that winning an Oscar is a lot like running a political campaign.
Absolutely. She said that, for example, she spoke about the documentary category. She started with that because she is a documentary filmmaker. And she said, just from the get-go, you need to spend $50,000 at least to prepare for screenings in targeted markets, to get the word out. And that doesn't even involve having the big billboards on the buses and the ads on TV, and sending all these DVDs to the voters.
Which costs a lot of money.
A lot of money.
So it's not always the best film that actually wins the day.
Yes, you can say that. Big budget films usually have the upper hand. But the fact is, and this year specifically, if you have something really stellar in the indie category, it will be noticed.
Yeah,
and especially since last year, people became more sensitized to paying attention to more minority
Right,
films.
and I want to talk about the last couple of years, in fact, because the Academy has been under intense scrutiny. Remember the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite. That doesn't seem to be the case this year.
No. The voters have, the demographics have been tweaked a little bit. The awareness is there. More people are paying attention. And it actually, this is why it's a toss-up this year, because we may see actually the pendulum going the other way completely when a voter has to tackle with
Academy members could actually vote on a political basis.
Yes,
and
and
say,
with
we
their
want to make a point.
with their conscience. They may say, well, yeah, this is big, this is important, but have I paid enough attention to that one?
Because there's a lot of very key nominations going to prominent African Americans. I don't want to go there yet because speaking of politics, there's this Iranian director, Ashghar Farhadi, whose film Salesman has been nominated for Best Foreign Film. Now he's making a political statement this year, isn't he? He's boycotting the awards.
He
Why?
said he's not going to be coming because of the travel ban, the executive order that Trump had signed. President Trump, I should say, and that, he said, although he would have special permission to come here, he refuses to do so, to make a statement.
Because that ban was taken down, which means he could actually show up, but he's decided not to.
He is not coming, no. He has decided not to come. And of course, that has caused tremendous uproar in Hollywood, has put his film in the forefront. I don't know if it is the best film necessarily. It is a good film. All nominees are good. So if that gives him a leg up, it's quite possible.
Are you anticipating any political speeches at this year's Oscar?
100%.
100%.
100%. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what everybody.
They're going to try to beat
prepared.
Meryl Streep's statement, right?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
We shall see. That's going to be part of what's interesting there. But in the time that I have left, I want to talk to you about some of the main contenders right now. I don't have all of the films here, but I want to talk about the first one because there's been so much buzz this year heading into the Oscars. For La La Land, 14 nominations. Why do you think that movie connected with so many people?
First of all, it's a love letter of Hollywood to Hollywood. So it is very, very possible that, Hollywood and voters connected with that. Secondly, it is a beautiful story. It's a good,
beautifully shot,
very well made film. The music is amazing.
I'm still humming the tune.
And frankly, Damien Chazelle is a genius in that genre. He has incorporated notes to musicals since the 30s. There are something like 30 or 40 musical hints there.
And then coming out of nowhere, seemingly, Moonlight, which won Best Film at the Golden Globes.
Yeah, of course, Golden Globes, I'm always very skeptical, I'll be honest with you. I actually go more by BAFTAs if I want to see the barometer.
And BAFTA gave it to La La Land, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I believe they did not focus as much on Moonlight at all.
Fences now. Standout performances by both Denzel Washington and Viola Davis.
Viola Davis is going to win. I can tell you that with a certainty of the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning.
Powerful. And of course, Hidden Figures was for me kind of like the hidden gem, kind of a feel-good film that's based on a true story.
And I want to say, don't count it out as being voted as Best Picture. It's a feel-good film. It has fit the perfect niche between feel-good, great story, well done, and an African-American
Okay, so
theme.
I'm gonna make sure you go out on a limb here. So who's gonna win Best Film?
Best film, I believe it's going to be La La Land with the possibility of Hidden Figures.
Best Actor and Best Actress?
Best Actor is going to be Casey Affleck or Denzel, and Best Actress Emma Stone.
We will check you for the record on Monday. Thank you, Penelope Ballou. We are out of time, but we will, of course, be back again next week for another edition of The Correspondents. We hope you'll join us again. If you want to get the latest on the Oscar nominations, just check voanews.com. We'll have all the rest of the news there as well. I'm Millar Sega. Thank you for joining us. And for now, so long from Washington.